My mother told me the house wasn't mine. The property letter arrived a week later. Before you find out what happens next, hit the subscribe button and drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. The kitchen table was covered in brochures for luxury condos and cruise ships. My mother, Beatrice, sat at the head of the table, tapping a calculator with a manic energy I hadn't seen in years. She looked up as I entered, her eyes gleaming with a mix of greed and triumph. It had only been 10 days since my grandmother, Nana Rose, had passed away. The funeral flowers were barely wilted on the grave, but my mother was already counting money she hadn't earned. "Pack your bags, Leo," she said, not even offering a hello. "I'm putting the house on the market on Monday. I have a realtor coming in an hour to take photos." I froze, my hand gripping the back of a wooden chair. I had lived in this house for 12 years. I moved in when I was 18 to care for Nana Rose when her dementia started to set in. Beatrice, her own daughter, had visited maybe 5 times in that entire decade. "You can't sell the house, Mom," I said, my voice shaking. "Nana wanted me to keep it. She told me." Beatrice laughed, a harsh, barking sound. "What a senile old woman said to you doesn't matter, Leo. I am her next of kin. I am the heir. This house is mine." "It's not just a house," I argued, stepping further into the room. "It's my home. I paid the property taxes for the last 5 years. I paid for the new roof. You didn't contribute a cent." Beatrice waved her hand dismissively, as if swatting away a fly. "That was rent, Leo. You were living here, so you paid for upkeep. That doesn't make you the owner. The deed is in Rose's name, and since she didn't leave a will, the laws of intestacy say it goes to her only child. That's me." She stood up and walked over to the fridge, grabbing a bottle of wine. "I've already spoken to a lawyer. It's a done deal. You have until Sunday to get your junk out of the basement. I don't want the clutter scaring off buyers." My junk was my life. My books, my clothes, the workshop I had built in the garage. "Where am I supposed to go?" I asked. "I spent my savings fixing the foundation last month." Beatrice shrugged, pouring a glass. "You're 30 years old. Figure it out. Maybe get a real apartment instead of mooching off your dead grandmother." I walked out to the porch, my chest tight. The old swing creaked as I sat down. I looked out at the garden I had planted for Nana. The hydrangeas were in full bloom, blue and purple heads bobbing in the breeze. I had planted them because Nana loved the color. Beatrice didn't know a hydrangea from a weed. She would probably pave over the garden to make a parking pad. I felt a deep sense of betrayal. Nana had always promised me the house. "When I'm gone, Leo," she would say, squeezing my hand with her paper-thin fingers, "this place is yours." I made sure of it. But Nana was forgetful. Maybe she thought she had done it but never signed the papers. Maybe she had hidden a will that Beatrice had already found and destroyed. I wouldn't put it past my mother. She had a history of losing things that didn't benefit her. I felt helpless. Without a document, I was just a squatter in the eyes of the law. Beatrice had the bloodline, and apparently that was all that mattered. The next day, the invasion began. A sleek black car pulled up, and a woman in a sharp blazer stepped out. It was the realtor, Mrs. Gable. She looked at the house with dollar signs in her eyes. Beatrice greeted her at the door like they were old friends. "It needs a little work," Beatrice said loudly, gesturing to the porch where I was sitting. "And we need to clear out the current occupant. But the bones are good." Mrs. Gable looked at me with pity. "Hi," she said. "I'm sorry for your loss." "Don't be," Beatrice interrupted. "He's fine. He was just the caretaker." The caretaker. That hurt more than anything. I wasn't a hired hand. I was the grandson who sat up with Nana when she had nightmares. I was the one who fed her. I was the one who held her hand when she took her last breath while Beatrice was on a cruise in the Bahamas. I stood up. "I'm not the caretaker," I said firmly. "I live here." Beatrice glared at me. "Not for long. Go for a walk. Let the professionals work." I didn't go for a walk. I went to the garage. I needed to find proof. I tore through the old filing cabinets Nana kept next to the washing machine. I looked for a will, a note, anything. I found receipts from 1990. I found Christmas cards. I found manuals for appliances that broke 20 years ago. But I found nothing legal. No will. No trust. No deed transfer. My heart sank. Had Nana lied? Or had she just been confused? Dementia did strange things to the mind. Maybe she truly believed she had given me the house, but in reality, she had done nothing. I sat on the cold concrete floor, feeling tears prick my eyes. I had sacrificed my 20s for this house and for her. And now I was going to be homeless. Beatrice was going to sell it, spend the money on vacations and clothes, and I would be left with nothing but memories. I heard Beatrice laughing inside the house with the realtor. They were discussing staging. They were talking about painting over the mural Nana and I had painted in the kitchen. Saturday came too quickly. Beatrice was in full demolition mode. She had hired a dumpster, and it was sitting in the driveway. She was throwing things away indiscriminately. Nana's old quilts? Dumpster. The photo albums? Dumpster. I spent the morning diving into the trash to rescue what I could, piling it in the back of my truck. "You're pathetic," Beatrice sneered from the porch. "Hoarding trash. No wonder you don't have a girlfriend." "It's history, Mom," I said, clutching a box of photos. "It's our family." "It's clutter," she snapped. "And by the way, I changed the locks this morning. Here is a key to the back door only. You can use it to move your stuff out, but don't try the front. I don't want you sneaking in and ruining the staging." I looked at the key in my hand. It was a small, brass insult. She treated me like a criminal in my own home. I wanted to scream, but I knew it wouldn't help. I needed a miracle. My brother, Trent, arrived on Sunday to help. By help, he meant help Beatrice. Trent was 5 years older than me and just as materialistic as our mother. He drove a leased sports car and wore fake designer watches. "Bro," he said, slapping me on the back. "Rough break. But hey, Mom said she might give you $1,000 from the sale to help with a deposit on a rental. That's generous." "I don't want her money," I said, loading my toolbox into my truck. "I want the house." Trent laughed. "Dude, let it go. It's prime real estate. We're talking $500,000 easy. Mom deserves it. She's the daughter." "She was never here, Trent." I shouted. "Where were you when Nana fell? Where were you when she forgot who we were?" Trent shrugged. "People get old, Leo. It happens. You chose to stay. That's on you." They were a team, united by greed. I was the outsider. I finished packing my truck and drove to a motel. I couldn't spend another night under the same roof as them. I stayed at the motel for 3 days. I went to work, I was a carpenter, but my mind wasn't on the job. I kept checking my phone, expecting a text from Beatrice saying she had sold the house. On Wednesday, I realized I had mail still going to the house. I had forwarded my address, but it takes time. I needed to check the mailbox one. Last time before Beatrice completely took over. I drove by the house around noon, knowing Beatrice would be out at lunch with the realtor. The for sale sign was pounded into the front lawn. It looked like a tombstone. I walked up the driveway, feeling like a trespasser. I opened the mailbox. It was stuffed. Beatrice hadn't checked it in days. Junk mail, bills addressed to Nana, and a thick, white envelope. I pulled the envelope out. It was heavy. The return address was the county recorder of deeds. It wasn't addressed to the estate of Rose Miller. It wasn't addressed to Beatrice Miller. It was addressed to Leo Miller, property owner, 142 Maple Street. I stared at it. Property owner? My hands started to shake. I looked around to make sure no one was watching, then I ripped it open right there on the sidewalk. Inside was a document with a gold seal. It was titled, "Confirmation of Recording, Transfer on Death Deed." I read the document, my heart pounding against my ribs like a hammer. This letter confirms that the transfer on death deed, signed by Rose Miller on August 14, 2018, was officially executed upon the filing of her death certificate. Ownership of the property located at 142 Maple Street has been transferred in full to the named beneficiary, Leo Miller. The date? 2018. That was 4 years before her dementia got bad. She had done it. She hadn't forgotten. She had gone to the county office years ago, probably with a friend, and filed the paperwork that bypassed probate entirely. A transfer on death deed doesn't go through a will. It doesn't care about next of kin. It works like a life insurance beneficiary. The moment she died, the house became mine. Automatically. Instantly. I leaned against the mailbox, laughing. I laughed until I cried. Nana hadn't left me. She had protected me. She knew Beatrice would come for the house. She knew Trent would want the money. So she made it ironclad. She made it so they couldn't touch it. I looked at the house again. It wasn't a tombstone anymore. It was mine. The for sale sign on the lawn was a lie. Beatrice didn't have the right to sell it. She didn't even have the right to be inside without my permission. She was the trespasser. I folded the letter carefully and put it in my pocket. I didn't go inside. Not yet. I needed to do this right. I got in my truck and drove straight to the sheriff's office. I walked into the station and asked to speak to a deputy about a civil dispute that was escalating. Deputy Miller, no relation, listened to my story. I showed him the letter from the county recorder. He looked it over, then checked something on his computer. Yep, he said, nodding. According to the county database, updated yesterday, you are the sole owner of record. My mother is in the house right now, I said. She changed the locks. She's throwing away my property. And she's trying to sell the house. The deputy frowned. Well, that's illegal eviction and theft. Do you want us to escort her off the premises? I do, I said. But I want to do it when the realtor is there. I want them to know the truth. The deputy nodded. I can meet you there in an hour. I drove back to the house and parked my truck right behind Beatrice's car, blocking her in. She was home. The realtor's car was there too. Perfect. I walked up the steps. The front door was locked, of course. I used my key to the back door, the one she had graciously allowed me to keep. I walked into the kitchen. Beatrice and Mrs. Gable were standing in the living room. Beatrice was holding a paint swatch. I think a light gray would cover up those old marks, she was saying. Get rid of the character, make it modern. Excuse me, I said loudly. They both jumped. Beatrice spun around, her face twisting in anger. Leo, I told you not to come in here. I have a showing in 20 minutes. Get out. I'm not leaving, I said calmly. But you are. Beatrice laughed, a nervous, high-pitched sound. Mrs. Gable, I apologize. My son is having a hard time accepting reality. I'll call the police if he doesn't leave. Please do, I said. Actually, I already did. I pulled the letter out of my pocket. I unfolded it slowly. Mrs. Gable, I said, turning to the realtor. I think you should see this before you list a property that doesn't belong to your client. Mrs. Gable looked confused. She stepped forward and took the paper from my hand. She read it. Her eyes went wide. She looked at the date. She looked at the seal. Then she looked at Beatrice. Beatrice, Mrs. Gable said, her voice icy. Did you know about this? Know about what? Beatrice snapped, snatching the paper. It's probably a forgery. He printed it off the internet. Mrs. Gable shook her head. That is a certified county document. It says the deed transferred to Leo upon death. It's a deed. That's impossible. Beatrice shrieked. She was senile. She didn't know what she was doing. It was signed in 2018, I reminded her. She was sharp as a tack then. Sharp enough to know you would try to steal her house. Beatrice crumpled the paper. It's fake. I am the daughter. I am the heir. The front door opened. Deputy Miller walked in. He didn't knock. Door was unlocked, he said. He looked at the scene. Beatrice red-faced and screaming, me standing calm, the realtor looking terrified. Is there a problem here, Mr. Miller? He asked me. Yes, deputy, I said. There are intruders in my house. I've asked them to leave, and they are refusing. Beatrice gaped at the officer. Intruders? I'm his mother. This is my mother's house. Actually, ma'am, the deputy said, hooking his thumbs in his belt. I checked the records. This house belongs to Leo Miller. And since he is the owner, he decides who stays. If he wants you out, you have to go. Mrs. Gable was the first to move. She grabbed her purse. I am so sorry, Leo, she stammered. I had no idea. I assumed the title search was just pending. I'm canceling the listing immediately. She looked at Beatrice with disgust. Don't call me again. She practically ran out the door. Now it was just Beatrice, the deputy, and me. Beatrice looked at the officer, then at me. Her power was evaporating. You wouldn't, she whispered. You wouldn't kick your own mother out on the street. You kicked me out 3 days ago, I said. You threw my life in a dumpster. You told me to figure it out. I was grieving, she cried. I wasn't thinking straight. You were thinking about money, I said. You were thinking about cruises and condos. You weren't thinking about Nana, and you certainly weren't thinking about me. I pointed to the door. You have 10 minutes to gather your personal items, your purse, your coat. Anything else stays. If you took anything of Nana's, you bring it back, or I press charges for theft. Beatrice looked at the deputy. He nodded. 10 minutes, ma'am. Or I can assist you. She let out a scream of frustration and ran to the dining room where she had piled her purse and jacket. She didn't look at me as she stormed out. She slammed the door so hard the windows rattled. Do you want to file a trespassing order? Deputy Miller asked. Not today, I said, feeling the adrenaline drain out of me. I just want to change the locks. Smart move, he said. Good luck, Leo. When he left, the silence in the house was different. It wasn't empty anymore. It was heavy, but it was mine. I walked to the kitchen. The paint swatches were still on the counter. I swept them into the trash. I went to the dumpster outside and started pulling my things back out. It took hours, but by sunset, I had my books back on the shelves. I had Nana's quilt back on the sofa. Trent called me that night. He was furious. You embarrassed Mom, he yelled. The realtor told everyone in town. You made us look like fools. You made yourselves look like fools, I said, eating a sandwich in my kitchen. You tried to sell something that wasn't yours. We're going to sue, Trent threatened. We'll contest the deed. We'll say she was coerced. Go ahead, I said. The deed was notarized and filed 4 years ago. You'll spend more on lawyers than you'll ever get. And Trent? Don't come over. You're not invited. I hung up and blocked his number. I blocked Beatrice's number too. The next few weeks were spent undoing the damage Beatrice had caused. I fixed the holes she had made in the walls for her staging. I replanted the flowers she had trampled. I went to the bank and set up the official mortgage transfer, which was easy since the house was paid off. I just had to pay the taxes. I found a box in the attic that Beatrice had missed. It was labeled Leo. Inside was a letter from Nana. It was dated the same day she signed the deed. My dearest Leo, I know they will come for the house. They always wanted the things, never the time. I'm signing this deed today to make sure that the boy who gave me his time gets to keep the things. Don't let them bully you. You are the man of the house now. Love, Nana. I framed that letter and hung it in the hallway, right next to the official deed from the county. It was my shield. A few months later, I heard through the grapevine that Beatrice had moved into a small apartment. She told people her son had stolen her inheritance. People in town knew the truth, though. Small towns talk, and Mrs. Gable had talked plenty. One rainy afternoon, a car pulled up. It was Beatrice. She didn't come to the door. She just sat in her car, looking at the house. Looking at the garden that was blooming again. I watched her from the window. I didn't feel angry anymore. I just felt pity. She had chosen greed over family, and now she had neither. I walked out to the porch. She rolled down her window. She looked older, tired. I just wanted to see the hydrangeas, she said, her voice quiet. They look good. Nana loved them, I said. Yeah, she murmured. She did. She paused. I'm having trouble with rent, she said. I thought maybe. I shook my head. No, Mom. Just a loan, she asked. I'm not the bank, I said. And I'm not the caretaker. I'm the owner. And you need to leave. She rolled up the window and drove away. It was the hardest thing I ever did, turning her away. But it was also the most necessary. I went back inside and locked the door. I walked into the living room, sat in Nana's old chair, and looked around. The house was safe. The legacy was safe. The letter from the county had arrived just in time, but the truth had been there all along. A home isn't just bricks and wood. It's love and sacrifice. Beatrice thought she could inherit it by blood. But I had earned it by heart. And that was a title no one could take away. I picked up the phone and called a contractor. I was going to finish the renovations Nana and I had talked about. We were going to expand the kitchen. I looked at the mural we had painted. I wouldn't paint over it. I would frame it. It was part of the house's soul. As the sun set, casting long shadows across the floorboards, I felt a deep sense of peace. The property letter was filed away in a safe, but I didn't need to look at it to know the truth. I was home. And this time I was here to